Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous. That's the 2025 Subaru Impreza. But more specifically, this is the sport trim level. So it's actually the middle trim level currently offered in the Impreza lineup. And then this one is a color that Subaru likes to call pure red, which doesn't have any metallic flake in the paint, but is a very deep, very dark and shiny color of red, which looks fantastic in person. And although this is the cheapest Subaru that you can currently buy, it's not perfect. So today I gotta share the good, the bad, and the ugly of this compact class of vehicle to help you guys decide if it might be the right one for you, or if you should leave it at the lot and maybe look at the competition. Anyways, we're gonna go through a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to Twin Falls Subaru for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below because they sell below MSRP, they ship all over the country. And with that said, let's dive right into this review. And if you like Subaru, the Impreza, or the effort it took to make my video, please be so kind to consider liking my video. Basically, that lets me know you want to watch more stuff like this, helps my video get shared, and it'll help you as well by having YouTube choose to show you more stuff like this. Thank you so much. But if you're new to Subaru as a company, or the Impreza as a model, there's really a few things that you should know. First of all, Subaru is one of the Japanese automakers, so they are known for reliability, affordability, and developing safe vehicles. Subaru is no exception to that. But what you might not know is the company came out back in 1915, so they just celebrated their 110th birthday. That's a longer history than most of us have been alive. But it wasn't actually until 1954 that Subaru switched from being mostly a military company to producing passenger cars. And then it wasn't until 1968 that they decided, you know what, guys? The war ended quite a while ago. Let's start sending our Japanese cars to the United States market. So these have been sold for quite a while, but the Impreza specifically was born back in 1992. This one is the 6th generation. It came out last year. It really wasn't a huge redesign compared to the 5th generation. It did add and gain quite a few upgraded features, but this current year, 2025, even though Subaru has for some reason still not updated their website from the 2024s, it is worth mentioning not much has changed other than about a $600 price jump between all the trim levels, and these sell globally, or at least in the United States, Canadian, and Japanese market. This example was assembled in Japan before it was shipped over here, and we usually get around 30 to 80,000 of these every single year, depending on how well they sell and what else is going on in the world that year. But if you are considering the Subaru Impreza, you probably should know what it comes with and how much are you going to be paying. Well, a base model starts at just over $23,000, and you get a lot of the things that you need, but not everything that you might want. So you do have the Gen 4 eyesight system, which is the triple camera design. You have a lot of the standard safety features, a lot of the crash test results that you're going to get on any of the vehicles, but you might be missing a few of the creature comforts. So this one being the sport mode, or the sport trim level, it has a sport tune suspension. It has these fairly nice looking 18-inch wheels compared to a smaller 17-inch. It also has the 11.6-inch screen versus the dual independent screens. It also has heated seats. It has the power moonroof, which is part of the optional package, and it has a few other features that you're going to see throughout. But if you really want to spend a lot on your Subaru Impreza, you're welcome to buy the 2.5-liter powered RS trim level, which that is another story for another time. But just know that I think the sport or the base is really the sweet spot. If you can pick one of these up for $23,000 to $25,000, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape because this is a lot of vehicle for that amount of money. And whether you go base model, sport, or RS, I honestly think all of these are going to be pretty fun to drive because they're smaller, lightweight cars and the physics of them work really well on the road. They're also quite easy to park. This is about 14.6 feet long. It still has an 8.75 foot wheelbase, so it's very planted and stable on the road. It's about 5.8 feet wide, 4.8 feet tall, so it's basically a Subaru Crosstrek, but without all the extra black plastic cladding and 3 inches of less suspension. So it has 5.1 inches of ground clearance, a 370 final drive ratio. It can do a full circle in 35 feet while being able to tow. This kind of surprises me, but what I find online is 2,500 pounds, or if you get the RS, it can actually tow 3,500 pounds, which feels like a lot for this kind of low-powered unibody compact class of vehicle. Anyways, though, it's fun to drive, and it handles pretty well for what it is. And then the last few things to mention here is when you lock the vehicle, the gas door locks, so keep that in mind at the gas station. But the good thing is the bums can't siphon any of your 16.6 gallons of fuel. And then because this is not a super lifted Crosstrek or other Subaru, actually gets really good MPG, 27 in the city and 34 on the highway. So the max road trip and range could be as much as 564 miles per the EPA rating. And then that 18-inch wheel is actually wrapped in a Yokohama Avid S34 tire. It's a 225 40/18, and it looks pretty good. It seems to have around 9/32 of tread depth. And then this is your proximity key. You have lock, you have unlock, you have trunk release because this does not have a power lift gate, and then you have panic button. But honestly, when you have proximity key, leave that in your pocket because you do have the proximity key features to lock and unlock the vehicle and the door handle. The driver's side door panel of this actually looks basically just like a Crosstrek. You have a variation of materials, colors, trim pieces, and even on a sport mode, the trim doesn't necessarily look cheap. The cloth, I actually prefer that to cheap plastic. I think it adds a little bit more sound deadening, but there's not really a whole lot to talk about. There's nothing on the door sill either. This does have all-weather mats with the few options that it does have. Rubberized pedals, hood release fuse box, just the dashboard lighting option right there. Ventilation lighting stock. This does have LED projector, steering responsive headlights, and fog lights. And then a manually adjusted seat, which honestly I think is really comfortable and I like it a lot. And then a power moonroof up top. Sitting inside the Crosstrek is also a pretty nice place to be. The horn, it's very high pitched. Not really surprising though. Visibility is fantastic. This is just like a polymer plastic steering wheel. It's not leather wrapped. It's not heated. It does have the paddle shifters for the 8 simulated gears. You have voice and volume controls on the left, all your adaptive cruise settings on the right, and push button start. The needles dance. If I had a wall in front of me, I could show you the steering responsive headlights, do a little theatrical display. Basically, when you're going over 5 miles per hour, the steering will turn with the road. So you see there's a turn up ahead. It's pretty cool how well these work. And then this is the 11.6-inch screen. There's not a ton to talk about. It does have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay wirelessly, and overall, those do a pretty good job. But sometimes it can be kind of slow to respond. But every single year, this screen gets better. The software seems to improve. And then you have some plugins. You have a huge spot to store stuff that is rubber lined. The backup camera on these never looks very good. Plus, when you have this extra protective film over it from the factory, it still is just not going to look fantastic, but it does the job. Electronic parking brake. Heated seats actually work pretty darn good in this vehicle. 12-volt cup holders, carryover CD tray from when these used to have a CD player, and then a huge center console with no 12-volt or anything. This does have the optional auto-dimming mirrors with HomeLink compasses, and the compass, I highly recommend that. I think it's absolutely worth a few $100s. There's your power moonroof. It can tilt and it can slide. These are incandescent. What is this? Incandescent. With that said, let's turn it off and we'll hop in the back. But for being a compact little mini hatch of a vehicle, the back seats on these are actually pretty impressive. The doors open huge. You can easily get stuff in here, dog kennels and car seats if you need to. The door panel looks about the same as the front. Nothing to really talk about there. I think it's going to age pretty well. And then this is your 60-40 split. The seats are light, and honestly, they're pretty comfortable. I'm 5'11", sitting behind a nice and relaxed driver position. I still have that much room in front of my knees. I do wish I had vents, heated seats, all those plugins that you might have on a higher-end Subaru. But in this, honestly, it's nice enough that I probably could go across the country and not be too upset about that. With that said, let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. I'll be honest, guys, I'm not always the biggest fan of red vehicles because they draw more attention. Sometimes they show more scratches, dirt, and debris, just depending on the pigment of the red. But this, I actually think it looks really good, and it doesn't seem to be too bad of a job for how it contrasts with the red LEDs. I actually think the colors are distinctly enough that they actually look really good. But when we open the hatch, it's not a power liftgate, so that's going to be more reliable, but some of you guys might wish it had that option. It does have the pin code because it does have the proximity key. So I do have a video on how to set that. Otherwise, back here you have about 20 cubic feet of room, which is actually pretty good for a 14.5-foot long vehicle. When you drop the seats forward, you have about 55, and they do lay basically flat, so if you had to car camp in here, you just about could. I guess there is a little bit more of a hump on this than there is on the Crosstrek, so I kind of forgot. It's been a while since I've driven one of these. And then you have the dog bowl, you have the dog food tray, and then under here you have nothing. No temporary spare tire, just a fix-a-flat kit, which I don't know why there's a scissor jack and all the tools if you don't have a temporary spare tire. The Crosstrek still has one of those. The hybrid Crosstrek does not. Neither does the Impreza. But at least you have a fix-a-flat kit, even though I'm not sure that those necessarily work very well, and I hope you don't ever have to find out. But if we come around to the passenger side, you also have the proximity key features right there to lock and unlock the vehicle. When you open it up, the door panel opens wide. It's all the same materials. You're just missing some of the switchgear. Of course, you don't have powered options, but my backpack on this 20-something degree day really enjoys the heated seats. You can see the rails, you can see the slidey bar. Nothing on the transmission tunnel, nothing above the glove box or storage. It's also non-locking. There's no 12 volts in here. It barely holds more than your huge Subaru manual and information, but that's okay. This is kind of a small car. And with that said, let's come around to the front. I'm gonna pop the hood and I'll show you what the 2-liter boxer engine looks like. Under the hood is a 2-liter boxer engine, 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated. It makes basically 150 horse and torque. The torque is gonna be around 4,000 RPM. The horsepower is gonna be closer to 6,000 RPM. And it's all connected to a CVT in the back, which does a pretty decent job of putting the power down and making an efficient use of the power numbers that you have. Of course, a 6-speed manual would have been fun. A turbo engine would have been fun. And for the RS trim level, having a high-revving 2.4-liter like out of the BRZ would have been fantastic. But overall, this is a Subaru. They're rated very reliable by Consumer Reports. They're easy to work on. Air filter, induction, upper intake manifold, alternator, serpentine belt, oil filter, fill, reservoirs throughout, battery, fuse box. Everything is honestly pretty easy to identify, other than potentially the spark plugs, depending on your level of experience. All the maintenance is actually really easy to do. Even changing the serpentine belt. This is the only unibody, economy-friendly unibody vehicle that I know of with a very good mechanical all-wheel drive system and a front-facing longitudinally mounted engine, which is really a cool thing about Subarus. With that said, let's drop the hood, take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the 2025 Subaru Impreza Sport. First of all, let's get up to speed. Partial throttle. Under partial throttle, this 2-liter doesn't actually feel underpowered. It's not until you give it all the gas, all the beans, that you can really tell that this thing kind of runs out of breath. And not just because we're at some altitude, but because 2 liters of naturally aspirated displacement only gets a passenger car so far. But overall, this feels just like a Crosstrek, which I used to own a Crosstrek. So what that means is visibility is really good. It drives smooth because this only has 5 inches of ground clearance. I think it handles better. Oh yeah, this handles better than a Crosstrek. It feels way sharper. Even though you can't really feel anything through the steering wheel, it turns in and it just goes. And that's why this Sport Tune suspension on the Sport trim level, or even the RS highest trim level, they actually feel pretty good for what these vehicles are. When you are driving them around a circle, when you are taking a corner, they feel better than they do in a straight line. If you want straight line performance and to go around a circle well, go around a corner, that is where the WRX comes in. But this thing, with Subaru symmetrical all drive, it really does grip and it actually holds down to the road better than you might expect. But since most of us are going to be driving the Sport Impreza pretty mildly, pretty sanely, it's smooth. There's not a ton of wind and road noise. These Yokohama all-season tires really aren't kicking up a lot of rocks, and there actually are quite a few rocks on this country road. Side mirrors are really good. This has the blind spot monitoring, which is the little nub that has been added for this generation. Rear view mirror works really well. You can see right down the center of the vehicle. There's going to be a bump coming up pretty soon. But honestly, I actually like this vehicle a lot. The fact that you can still buy a base model for around $25,000 after destination, I think is a pretty good deal in today's market. That's about half the value of the average new car. The speakers, they're not fantastic, but you get what you pay for in this trim level. And for having the optional package, having the power moonroof up top, having just a few subtle upgrades, the 18-inch wheels on this Sport, and a few other creature comforts, it's just a nice place to be in for about $28,000 after discount. You really can't knock it too much. I highly recommend you guys check one out for yourself. Go find one, test drive it, and see what you think. But also do that with the competition. Test drive a half dozen compact cars and see which one is the best for you. I like this a lot, so much so that I'm going to go find the private road and we're going to do a 0 to 60 next. 0 to 60 in the 2025 Subaru Impreza. Keep in mind, density altitude's only about 1,600 feet today, which is about the lowest I have ever seen it in my area, and that's partially due to the fact that it's 21 degrees outside. So we are in sport mode. I'm going to do a little bit of a brake rev on the CVT, and we will see what this 2-liter can do. RPM's holding like it should. And true 0 to 60 came in at 10.3 seconds, or a little bit faster if we discredit rollout, which is the way the magazines would have rated this. My final thoughts of the 2025 Subaru Impreza, specifically this Pure Red Sport example, is honestly, I think it's a lot of value for 28 grand, after the discount anyways. I do recommend you test drive the competition, check out the Hondas, the Toyotas, the other Japanese automakers, even the Americans if you want. But Subaru historically builds some of the safest vehicles on the road, some of the best and most capable in the winter. If you don't need, kind of the ego boost of having a ton of ground clearance, if you're not actually going to be driving more than 5 or 6 inches of snow in your area, you don't need a Crosstrek. This is more economical. It's a couple grand cheaper, and honestly, it's going to do the job just as well. But if you do need more ground clearance because it's easier to enter and exit your vehicle, you do live in an area that gets a lot of snow, or you want to drive on more than just paved roads, and you want to take this on trails that are more excessive than just gravel, slight inclinations, slight declinations, and you actually want to have some fun soft-roading, then you might need the Crosstrek, which is just the lifted version of this. But honestly, test drive them all, decide for yourself. This is a good vehicle, and I like it a lot. I think it's a really good value. And with that said, ultimately, all that matters is your thoughts and your opinions and your perception of all this, because I'm just a random person with one random opinion. And if you get anything out of this video today, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with that said, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care. Until next time, see ya.